You are listening to the Football Diehards podcast with your hosts, Justin Lonero and Bob Harris, sponsored by DraftKings. Sign up now using promo code DIEHARDS, DIEHARDS. Make a first-time $5 deposit, and you'll receive a free $3 ticket.
Hello and welcome to the Football Diehards podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lonero, on Twitter at Justin Lonero, along with my co-host, as always, Mr. Bob Harris at Football Diehard on Twitter, and our executive producer, Kyle Dvorchak at FF. Kyle the Kid is on the line tonight. Mr. Harris, week 6, what is going on in Albuquerque, New Mexico this evening?
The same old, a lot of football angst. And by the way, great job by Kyle doing all the techno wizardry that's required to make this happen this fine evening. The Skype playing tricks on him. Well done, Kyle. Well done, lad.
Skype tried to take us down. We're doing too good, and Skype was like, no more.
Nope.
I don't think that's what they were doing. But if someone's trying to take somebody down, it might be Mark Ingram and Sean Payton trying to take down Alvin Kamara. And as we all saw last night's game, the New Orleans Saints took down the Washington Redskins in pretty handy fashion. Wasn't a big deal, but there was some interest there in terms of how the workload was divided. And because it wasn't divided very well, it was basically the Mark Ingram show, right? So he ended up getting 16 carries, 53 yards, got the 2 touchdowns. It wasn't a huge workload, but striking that Alvin Kamara got the 6 carries for 24 yards. Kamara not a big factor in the passing attack, 4 targets, caught 3 of them for 15 yards. So, Justin, the world is going to panic. How are you going to stop them from doing this?
Well, I think there is room for a little bit of panic, right? I mean, so Mark Ingram, after Adrian Peterson left the Saints last season, I mean, this is a guy that's getting 20 carries a game. Right? He's heavily involved in the passing game. They were both top 10 fantasy running backs last year, Kamara and Mark Ingram. So it was a PED suspension. It didn't really have a lot to do with his health or nothing to do with his health. He's 28 years old. Look, Alvin Kamara is what Christian McCaffrey is, right? I mean, I don't know that the Panthers want to use McCaffrey 50 times a game. I don't know that the Saints want to use Kamara that much. We know what Mark Ingram is, and he's going to get the ball a ton. So if you were accustomed to Alvin Kamara eating all of it, no more, because Mark Ingram is going to eat. So in terms of volume, you saw it last night, thrown right into the flames as if he didn't miss any time at all. And Mark Ingram's, I suppose, one of the lone bell cows that is left in the game.
2 things. My ass is on fire and I'm choking from the smoke. Mm-hmm. I start thinking about panicking, but I don't. Mm-hmm. So no panic allowed. Hands off the panic button. But, set your expectations accordingly. Look, last year, Mark Ingram out-touched Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara was still the NFL Rookie of the Year. It's not like the two are mutually exclusive, like both of them getting touches. Oh, God, one's going away. Doesn't work like that, kids. Just go back and check last year's stats. I do think, last year Ingram out-touched Kamara. I wouldn't be surprised if that flips over the course of time. It didn't this week. Might have had something to do with the way the game was going. They're trying to get maybe Drew Brees had some records that needed to be set, and there wasn't a lot of work for either of those guys. It wasn't a ton of work for either of them anyway. If you combine it all up, it was 22 carries. I mean, it was kind of a standard game. If it gets split a little more equally going forward, and the guys that cover the team on a daily basis, Mike Triplett, who I've talked to a number of times for ESPN, and others, New Orleans Times Picayune staffers that we've spoken with, everyone kind of is of the opinion that this is going to be it's going to be closer to even, maybe Ingram not out touching him as much as he did last year. But keep in mind that Ingram is in probably his last year with the team.
Yep.
Why not, go on Mike Tomlin and run the wheels off him to some degree? Yep. And I think so they won't shy away from using him. I'm just not going to panic. Beyond that, it's kind of a waiver wire situation. Anybody in this room have a thing for Tre'Quan Smith?
Yeah.
Me, I'm raising my hand higher than Justin. I really do.
Go ahead.
I mean, I think certainly from what we've seen of the Saints, they've definitely moved back into this passing game, which was last year what we saw was the exact opposite of that, where they were committed to running the ball, and rightfully so. They were doing it extremely well. You can't blame them for continuing what was being successful, but this year their defense has not been the same, which has not allowed them to run the ball. They're not playing with these crazy good game scripts all the time, although last night they were, but typically where they're getting in shootouts again, and I'm willing to buy the number 2 receiver, what appears to be the number 2 receiver on any Drew Brees offense that wasn't last year.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, right, Justin? The defense is not the same defense we saw last year, so
no.
I think that's going to be a big factor. And this, and Drew Brees is playing well, so you like the Tre'Quan Smith as well.
I do, and if somebody tweeted out the other day, look, if Tre'Quan Smith played for Alabama, he might have been gone as high as Calvin Ridley did. I mean, how many pass catchers can the Saints support at this? You've said in the past, Bob, like the Kansas City Chiefs, being a bad defense, that translates to good offensive production and consequently good fantasy production. Right? With Ted Ginn's in the equation. Cameron Meredith is going to do his thing. Obviously, Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram can still catch 50 passes. But I think for the future, Tre'Quan Smith is a damn good wide receiver. He reminds me a little bit of Sammy Watkins. But the interesting thing here is this is a Saints team where, again, I mean, they've finally established some type of run game. And we haven't seen that historically in the past on Drew Brees offenses. So they're probably going to try to have some more balance. And why wouldn't you? We've been talking about Mark Ingram. So it'll be interesting. I think he's going to have his weeks like last night and probably more weeks, but it'll be spotty. And Mike, it's the Michael Thomas show in New Orleans. We can all agree on that.
Yeah, until it's not, which has been the last 2 weeks. It was before that. And look, I don't know how many games you expect those double-digit catches and a touchdown. He is capable of that. Ask Josh Norman, or go read their Twitter battle of Monday night, the epic overnight Twitter battle that was mostly taken down. But moving on to Philadelphia, where there's opportunities arise anew with Jay Ajayi done for the year, torn ACL. Before he left, he was complaining about the team's failure to commit to the run. It's hard to argue his point, and I think even Doug Peterson agreed, but they've got to get the game script going, right? But now we've got a situation where we have some potential running backs who can rise up the ranks a little bit. One of them would be Wendell Smallwood. One of them would be Corey Clement. Darren Sproles is still there. Well, there's plenty of trade rumors. Are they interested in Le'Veon Bell? That seems less likely than the latest rumor, which is they've been inquiring about LaShawn McCoy there. Somebody threw out a David Johnson last night, one of the local Philadelphia reporters. The one looking for McCoy makes sense. Led the team in rushing for 6 years. It has some roots there. But either way, let's go for now that there's going to be just, certainly this week, and let's say for the foreseeable future, trade deadlines the Tuesday following week 8. So they've got a little time to get something done, and trades are rarely done until the deadline hits. So let's say you want to play one of these guys. Justin, what looks more appealing to you? Is it a increasingly healthy, looks like he'll be healthy, Corey Clement, or is Wendell Smallwood the guy that's maybe on the rise?
We know that the Philadelphia Eagles like Corey Clement. He's got the body, 220. He's 23 years old. It's going to be Wendell Smallwood if it's Thursday night. Sproles is dinged. Corey Clement has missed a couple of weeks with the quad strain. It's going to be Smallwood. But when push comes to shove, I think that there's going to be – it's your ultimate committee. It's a damn shame to see Jay Ajayi go to IR with this torn ACL. But tonight, gun to my head, it's Wendell Smallwood. I think we've seen him over the last couple of years. When he's touched the ball – he's been decent, but there's no glamour and glitz here in this backfield tonight. I think the LaShawn McCoy situation is interesting. Of course, he went to Pitt. The Eagles drafted him. He had some unbelievable years in Philadelphia. But, Bob, you haven't been high on Shady for months or this whole offseason leading into the season. So it's gone to my head, Wendell Smallwood, but when push comes to shove, it's going to be a committee.
First of all, there will be no gunplay here. I'm a knife guy. So look, I have not been a Shady guy, but there's a reason for that. And it's not the fact that he's 30, it's the fact that he plays for the Buffalo Bills. And even at that, right now, I think we saw this past game a commitment to putting the ball in his hands that we're going to see from them going forward, at least the next few games, as they work to get Josh Allen going. So I have a little more hope for Shady. I would have a hell of a lot of hope if he showed up in Philadelphia. I mean, I think that would be a situation where there's a path to opportunities. They would be higher end opportunities. Certainly offensive line's better. So all those things work in his favor. I don't want to get that far in front of this because we don't know if that's going to happen. But Kyle, how interested would you be? Is the sneaky play here and all the rumor mongering and so on and so forth, if you were like wanting to make a speculative move, is Chris Ivory the guy?
I gotta say that's an interesting take on it, and I don't hate it only for the fact that I guess it's if you have the roster spots open, like if you are say the JHI owner and the waiver wires are looking a bit suspect, I don't hate that move. I think more than likely though, if Tre'Quan Smith's out there, I'd rather pick up a sure thing because we talked about this probably 2 weeks ago now that if LaShawn McCoy isn't producing particularly well on this offense, what are the odds Chris Ivory can? Not very good. Of course, I still will buy his volume should LaShawn McCoy be entirely out of the picture. He's worth an ad at that point, obviously. But unless you're playing in a deeper league, I think that's maybe getting a little too cute for me.
Justin Lonero, knife in your ribs right now. You can have one guy, one speculative running back on your roster. Would it be Rashad Penny? Would it be Ronald Jones? Or would it be Deonta Foreman?
Ooh, well,
I'm Preston.
Sadly, it's not Rashad Penny. I think it's going to be Jones. We've been taught. There's been a lot of cynics about Jones. We've been talking about Jones for months since the draft. Things haven't really worked out in Tampa Bay. It's going to be Jones. I mean, because Barber hasn't done a ton. So let's see what we have from this kid. You know, we drafted him for a reason, and I think there's still room for optimism with Ronald Jones.
I think, look, for me, it'd probably be Foreman. We saw Jones last game against the Bears, active for the first time, 10 carries, got about 2.0 per carry there, I believe it was. We've seen Rashad Penny. I use this line on the radio. I will use it again. I'm not saying Pete Carroll is flaky, but I'm going to start calling him Biscuit because there's no telling what this guy's going to do. We had the situation 2 weeks ago where, Chris Carson is out. You would expect a clear path for Rashad Penny, and they go to Mike Davis. And
unbelievable.
So it's just hard to figure. For me, the stash here is Deonta Foreman.
Yeah.
But it's way speculative, and I think all these guys are a little speculative right now.
Yep.
Foreman, we saw come on late last season. I think this is more a case of Miller. It's almost like Jones, and I think I agree with you on Jones because Barber has been so uninspiring. Peyton Barber as the starter has not looked like the Peyton Barber we saw to close down the end of the season. That if Deonta Foreman comes in and looks like he did to the end of the close of the season, I think he's a guy that could kind of have a Barber-like impact for the Texans. So that would be my pick as a total end of the bench speculative play. But I think there's lots of room to wiggle around. Let me ask you this, Kyle Dvorchak. Larry Fitzgerald or Christian Kirk rest of the season? Who you got?
I'm going to go with what we know, Larry Fitzgerald. Even though I did like Christian Kirk coming into the league, and I thought that he could be a good match with Josh Rosen, I think our prior of Larry Fitzgerald being so good is hard to discount right now. Of course, he won't be good forever. We all know that. But in an offense that has been uninspiring to say the least, I'll take our known commodity for now.
I think that's fair.
Right.
I think that's fair. But I will say this. I saw a very nice ball from Josh Rosen to Christian Kirk the other day.
I did too. 75 yards. Nice.
It was beautiful. We talk about nonverbal communication. We talk about rapports form. And look, eventually the party's going to end for Larry Fitzgerald. Sadly, he conditions himself well. We know what Larry Fitzgerald is. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I'm going to go with Kirk at this point. Maybe something new is forming, and that's what the Cardinals need on offense.
Yeah, we've got 300 catch seasons for Larry Fitzgerald. A fourth is not in the cards, I would say. I'm not sure how excited I am about Christian Kirk, but at this point, it can, when I look at some of these guys and I want to make a speculative play and I look at who's on my bench and I see Larry Fitzgerald on my bench, I look at who's ahead of him. Can he start over any of those guys? I think that's the question you have to ask yourself when you're making a speculative play and you're looking who to get rid of. And if the guy's name is Nelson Aguilar, can I get Nelson Aguilar in my starting lineup any week over the guys I have? If that answer is no, go on to your speculative play. It's not a reasonable thing. Justin, I want to give you a chance to opine on just how lousy Patrick Mahomes was this week.
Yeah, it's we're seeing something special here. We did see the interception. The kid's got it, and I will say this: after watching Alex Smith, they got this one right. I was dead wrong on Patrick Mahomes, in terms of, he's going to be a work in progress, but confidence goes a long way, gentlemen. He has the artillery around him. What is there to say?
A couple thoughts on this, and I have mentioned this a few times, and not as many times as Justin mentioned he didn't like Patrick Mahomes. But I mentioned, look, at some point you put a little trust and faith in the coaching staff. So I use this example of Andy Reid. I mean, you don't if you're an NFL head coach, you've been to the playoffs and you have a quarterback, and there's not 32 of those that are capable of starting at any given time in the NFL. No. To a high level, and you ship one of them away who just took you to the playoffs. You do that when you're pretty sure. I would say, listening to coaches is also something. Look, Joe Philbin told us what Lamar Miller was in Miami, right? Why we never want to believe him? We just got mad at Joe Philbin. Why don't you play him more? Well, it turns out Joe Philbin was around him, every single day and knew a little more about him when he did it. And I guess just not to belabor the point, but sometimes you have to put a little faith in the people who are around these players every single day. And it's something that we can do. One of the things we can do in the offseason. It doesn't guarantee a success. Look, the Seahawks invested first-round draft capital in Rashad Penny. Turns out he might not have been worth it so far. So,
real quick, Bob, real quick, back to D'Onta Foreman. I know we can't talk about everything. We're on a time here, but Lamar Miller has been inefficient. Bill O'Brien said last year we have to ease off Lamar Miller. I mean, look, he's the ultimate plotter. That's not to say that 233-pound D'Onta Foreman is not, but what we did see of Foreman was pretty good. So something has to change in that Texans backfield. And like you said, Joe Philbin was, saw something that we did not, and we've been really optimistic about Miller. It just hasn't come into fruition.
I think what he saw was just that he's better with a more limited workload, and we're going to hear that from Matt Patricia. Look, Matt Patricia told us this very same thing, that we've done season-long studies. Well, no surprise. He comes from New England. So does the GM of the Detroit Lions, Robert Quinn, the home of the Gordian knot of NFL backfields. You can't untie it, although it untied itself in New England, and then it moved over to Detroit, where we saw, Kerryon Johnson was building some momentum, and LeGarrette Blount comes out and gets the 2 short yardage touchdowns, and Theo Riddick continues to outsnap everybody. So these are the things that we have to deal with it, and we have to take them for what they are. So all right, guys, I know you're all itching to get into the daily fantasy kind of angles here, so I'm going to let the experts preach on that. And by experts, I mean guys like Justin and Kyle. Kyle, who has won millions.
Yeah, a couple million you're up to now, Kyle.
It was thousands, but it was more than me. So let's go. Let's look at this week's contest. Justin, start with you. What is the big game we're all looking at this week?
I'm going right back to the Atlanta Falcons at home against the team they're familiar with in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Matt Ryan has been the Matt Ryan we saw a couple of years ago with Kyle Shanahan, 11 touchdowns, 2 picks. I'm going to pay up for him, and I'm going to hope that Julio Jones turns into Julio Jones. I mean, if we can all be in agreement that quarterback is a pass happy league, so there are an array of options. But I'm most confident with Matt Ryan at home, 6,800. You're not really breaking the bank, and I'm fine with Andy Dalton at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who he's also familiar with, that has an atrocious secondary in terms of safe plays. Now, if I'm going to go down a little, it's tough to get off Jared Goff at this point. A lot of people, going to Denver, a misconception that this is the Broncos defense that we saw a couple years ago. It is not Jared Goff. I know Cooper Kupp is dinged up a little bit, but Robert Woods is doing his thing. Brandon Cooks, and you have the best running back in the game in Todd Gurley. So I do like Goff quite a bit, but it's creme de la creme. It's going to be Matt Ryan at home. Pay down a little for Dalton, who's not going to knock your socks off. And in tournaments, I will have some Jared Goff exposure.
Right. And you mentioned this, the scoring, and the league just announced today, through 5 weeks, 3,739 points have been scored. That's the most of any 5-week period in league history. Yep. The prior record was 35-66.
Crazy.
So, and this has been an ongoing thing. It is a passing league. So, Kyle, tell me who the quarterbacks of most interest are this week.
In cash, like many slates, I'm looking at Cam Newton, 6,100 on DK. He's averaging 8.6 fantasy points per game on the ground alone. He is doing so much with his legs that even if he has bad games passing, he's making up for it on the ground. He's hit 18 fantasy points in every game. If I'm going tournaments, I'm totally on board with that game. But a pivot play I think will be very interesting is Jameis Winston. You've got to look 5,800 Jameis Winston for the sole purpose that everybody's going to be on Matt Ryan, rightfully so, and he makes a great cash play. But if I'm looking to target this game, which you have to be, I'm pivoting to Jameis Winston in a decent amount of my tournament lineups.
Hey, Kyle, this show is sponsored by DraftKings. Don't forget that. Bragging rights and huge cash prizes are up for grabs this weekend. You want it. If you are not on DraftKings, sign up using promo code DIEHARDS. You get a free $3 deposit. All you got to do is throw $5 in. Again, go to DraftKings.com, download the app, use code DIEHARDS to enter a contest for free. This weekend, you're not married to a team on DraftKings. You're the GM. You just choose your players, standard, 50K. You get it. Listen to this show.
So let me just ask you this, because I thought it was an interesting point Jeff Mans brought up with me on the SiriusXM pregame show on Sunday. And it makes a lot of sense. We were talking about the Atlanta-Pittsburgh game, and anytime you have that kind of rush to get in on a game with a huge over-under like that game had, you do so knowing that it can come up short, and it can really wreck you if you stack too heavily. And sometimes in these games, if we're really super interested in them and you love all the receivers, but you don't want to stack, don't you just want to buy the quarterback because you get a piece of all the points?
Yeah, absolutely. But you just don't want – I mean, the thing is, and the terminology is naked. You would play a quarterback naked. And a lot of times you can play Cam Newton naked. But, and that's where stack comes into play. It's you want to – if for instance, Jared Goff has a Cooper Kupp week and you're not on Kupp, a lot of people are going to have him and you're going to be screwed. So there's only a handful of quarterbacks that you could play naked. Kyle, is there a quarterback that you would look at? I mean, Blake Bortles might be another guy that you would play naked with that array of wide receivers. We don't know which wide receiver is going to have that week. Is there a quarterback you would look at this week that you would say, all right, I'm semi-comfortable playing him naked? Maybe Andrew Luck at the Meadowlands without, say, T.Y. Hilton?
Actually, that's not a bad one, but you touched on Blake Bortles, who for the exact reasons you said, I love going naked with, but also because when Leonard Fournette's out, we've seen him get the ball in terms of his rushing factor go up at an absurd amount, and that's another reason that, like you said, the guys who rush a lot, I'm very comfortable with playing naked because I'm not Cam Newton. I'm not very comfortable playing any of his receivers, even if Greg Olsen comes back. I have no clue what kind of health state he's going to be in. So the guys who are rushing, or the guys who we don't know what their receiving core will shake out to be, and that's Cam Newton, that's Blake Bortles right now. Those are two great examples. I think Blake Bortles might be one of the best.
Yeah, I think last week I broke even thanks to Bortles. I'm a Bortles and Yeldon. I also had James Conner though, so and I think there's a little positive correlation in the quarterback running back combinations. Not nearly as much.
There's definitely positive correlation in that.
Right,
like you said, not receiver, but still.
Right, but that kind of thing. So all right, let's go to the running backs. Justin, who's the big cash game running back for you?
I mean, do you get off Todd Gurley at this point? Even though he's 10K, I mean, this is a guy that's averaging a shade under 30 fantasy points a game. He's going to do his thing. I mean, I think there's weeks where you say, all right, is he going to slow down at all? And the answer is no. He's being targeted 5-6 times a week. It's Todd Gurley.
Right. I mean, it's got Todd Gurley over there. So who's the cheap option to pair with him so you can get some high upside receivers as well?
Probably going to be Tariq Cohen. I mean, at 4,600, I have no problem at all playing Tariq Cohen, permitting he's used the way he was used last season. 4,600, Tariq Cohen, he's the running back version of Tyreek Hill. I think we want to see Matt Nagy use him the way he was used against Tampa Bay Week 4. Perfect. There are some. The under 5K range is interesting. We love what Isaiah Crowell did Sunday. He's got a juicy matchup against the Colts just at 5K. Am I confident about Crow every week? No, because there's going to be Bilal Powell weeks. So it's going to be Cohen if I'm paying way down, and I'll have some shades of Isaiah Crowell because I don't want to miss on him. Good
thing he's endorsing the dude wipes with that juicy matchup, right?
Exactly. And it's going to be tough to get off of TJ Yeldon at Dallas. I mean, I might use him with
Sean Lee again.
Well, exactly. I mean, poor Sean Lee. I mean, one of the best linebackers in the game, never, ever, ever healthy. He's like Jordan Reed. And also, Christian McCaffrey, talk about Cam Newton. I'm comfortable 9 out of 10 times playing Cam Newton with Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey's Alvin Kamara, essentially. Christian McCaffrey doesn't have to worry about Mark Ingram.
Kyle, tournament running backs, and go ahead and chime in with your cash plays as well.
Cash plays, I'm just looking to buy cheap volume that's really lock in your volume in cash. Right now, AP only 4,800. And we've seen in losses, it's so Adrian Peterson to be in losses when you're a negative game script. We know he's not going to get great receiving work. In losses this season, he's got 7 points per game, and in their wins, he's got 25. Of course, it's only 4 games for him, but I think that is just generally how you should view him. If you don't expect them to be playing with a lead, don't play him. And right now, they're 1-point favorites. And then Chris Carson, I think they're willing to just run him into the ground because nihilism, I don't know. I don't understand it. But as long as they keep giving him the ball, 4,400, he's a workhorse back. And in tournaments, I love going a really interesting stack that I think won't make a lot of my lineups, but I'll do at least one, is Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen. Because I expect this Bears defense to just go in on Ryan Tannehill, PFF's 32 ranked quarterback. And we saw last week they weren't afraid to play Tariq Cohen in positive game script. If they both score in a sort of Austin Eckler, Melvin Gordon way, that's a lineup nobody's going to have, so I can do that.
Ooh. And just for sake of perspective, gentlemen, I was looking at some of the fantasy leaders at this point in time. And right after Kamara, Gurley, Melvin Gordon, Barkley, at 5, you have James Conner, Zeke. James White is RB7. TJ Yeldon is RB8. Caffrey 9. DJ's 10. Right under there, you have Isaiah Crowell, Carlos Hyde, Naheem Hines is a fringe RB1 at this point. So the sea of mediocrity at tight ends is deep, as we know. But I'll tell you, gentlemen, some of these running backs, it's in Marshawn Lynch is in the equation, Austin Eckler. I mean, in PPR formats, there's some mediocrity at running back too.
You say that in a nice way, though. Wide receivers. We'll start with you, Kyle. Your top plays this week.
Top plays, cash, Adam Thielen. He is just phenomenal. Leads the league in targets now, tied with Antonio Brown for league in targets. And he should avoid, at least in some parts of the game, the Patrick Peterson matchup because he plays a lot from the slot. And that's something Kirk Cousins has been willing to feed him from that role. By the targets, 8,500 is a price I'm totally willing to pay if I'm not doing anything crazy like paying up for Todd Gurley, which is fine. That's just 10K is absurd, but he'll find a way to hit value. And then in tournaments, I'm looking to go Mike Evans and Julio Jones if I can find ways to get both of them in this lineup, or even Mohamed Sanu as a guy who had a good week last week. But I don't know if people are going to buy into last week being a regular thing, and it won't be a regular thing, but it could repeat in this game, and that's low ownership I'm willing to buy into.
I would agree. I mean, I think Adam Thielen, it's difficult to imagine he's going to sustain this. I mean, there's going to be Stephon Diggs.
5 straight 100-yard games. I mean,
I know he's right. He's special.
Progression's coming
at some point or another. I'm going to go to AB up top at 8,700. I mentioned the Cincinnati-Pittsburgh game. I love me some AJ Green for certain. I think it's tough to get off Stephon Diggs. If you want to pay less than Adam Thielen, and if I'm going to pay way down, and this is a position where you can really differentiate yourself, I'm going to like me some Demaryius Thomas at home, 5,800. He kind of came alive last week. Maybe something's going on there. DT is healthy and he's clicking on all cylinders. He's a top 10 or 12 NFL wideout. But what really intrigued me this week, like it has in the last couple of weeks, is right around the 5K range. You mentioned Mohamed Sanu, Kyle, which is, he's kind of like Quincy Enunwa, right? Big bodied slot guy, but he makes things easier for Matt Ryan. I'm fine with him. I think it's tough to get off Kiki Kuti at this point in time. I tweeted something out earlier. He's seeing close to double-digit targets every single week. I had 15 week 4, 7 last week. Very comfortable, particularly at 4,600. And if we're going to get cute here, and we can certainly get cute, Robbie Anderson is a home run hitter in tournaments. I don't know if people are going to be hesitant, and rightfully so. But in a cash game lineup, 4,500 without T.Y. Hilton, I'm going to need me some Chester Rogers. I mean, he's had mirror images week 4 and 5, 8 receptions, 11 targets in each week, right around 15 to 18 fantasy points, I'm going to pay $4,500. So again, it's a position we could differentiate ourselves with, but I'm going to need some AB. I'm going to need some AJ Green and definitely some Julio Jones because we're attacking that Falcons game.
I have two more wide receiver points I want to make. One, John Brown leads the league in air yards, and he's only 5,500. And two, Justin, you said cute right after talking about Kiki Kute or Cutie, and you didn't make a pun there. That would have been way too easy, and I'm proud of you for not going that low. Sorry, Bob.
I take points off for that.
Different taste.
Right, totally. I would say, John Brown is a guy that's like in at least one lineup of mine every single week. I rarely play without him. He's my security blanket. I'm throwing you the life preserver, Justin, so you can and your wings, your water wings, so you can wade into the sea of mediocrity. Tell me about tight ends this week.
I think it's a fair question, and it's sometimes very depressing to talk about. I find it hysterical that Eric Ebron is the top price tight end at this point. But what my eyes gravitated towards Cameron Brate.
Yeah.
No O.J. Howard.
Yes.
Right? This is a guy. What we know is Jameis Winston loves Cameron Brate. He's a red zone weapon, and I'm going to be all over Cameron Brate. And gentlemen, it sucks to say, and Austin Hooper is a top 10 fantasy tight end at this point in time, which is also hysterical, given that he only has one touchdown. But it goes to show you how deep the sea of mediocrity is. But it's coming off a 9-reception game, 12 targets. I'll probably go right back to Austin Hooper at 3,500 in a stack with Julio Jones or maybe some Calvin Ridley. But it really it's a position that gets thin. I do like Jeff Swain. It's not going to be easy against the Jaguars, but they lack weaponry. And Dallas looked like he's got a little bit of a rapport with Dak Prescott. I think if I'm getting 12, 13 points out of a tight end, we're happy, especially under 3K. It's going to be Swain. It's going to be Hooper. It's going to be Cameron Brate. And it's not going to be much more than that. It's like a $5,200 Jordan Reed who was just non-existent the other night.
Clearly, I need to recalibrate because I agree with every single thing Justin just said. In fact, my DFS 3-and-out column last week, the 3-ins were, James Conner was my top guy. I had Bortles and Yeldon, and then I had Marvin Jones as my third guy. They all came through to varying degrees, but Cameron Brate's going to be my top play this week, just given the price and his tournament play. But I do like to hear what Kyle has to say about these things because he wins more money than me. So go, Kyle.
I think the Cameron Brate play is specifically awesome in tournaments because so many people are going to see that great week from Austin Hooper last week and not take anything away from it. But that was an outlier based on almost everything we've seen from him basically throughout his career. Like that 12 targets, he may not see that again the rest of the season. I would actually bet that he will not see 12 targets in any game the rest of the season. So, and I think people are going to still buy into that, see that, and see this awesome over-under and say, I want to get a tight end in this game, and they'll overlook Cameron Brate, who admittedly hasn't really been that great this year, but I just want to buy the low-owned pieces of this game in tournaments. Cameron Brate is absolutely that, and he's a pivot off of Hooper, who I'd imagine will probably have good ownership. He's going to be so much in my tournament. In cash, I'm looking at David Njoku, had 11 targets, hasn't really scored a lot, but I think, the more Baker Mayfield he gets throughout the season, the better. And then Kyle Rudolph, 4,400. Tight end is so bad. He's got five receptions in four straight games, 8 points in every game this season. You have to take that 8 points in every game. If he hits 8 points, you're like, I guess, yeah.
You're settling for less. It's like going to the dentist looking at this list, isn't it?
It's bad. That's why I'm all over Cameron Brate, and I even still will, especially in cash, have some Austin Hooper.
Let me say this about Hooper. Real quick about Austin Hooper. Tied for sixth last season in red zone targets amongst tight ends. Doesn't say much because it's a dumpy pit of mediocrity, but Matt Ryan does love him, especially inside the 10. Take that for what it's worth.
Justin, it's a pit or a sea. Pick one, baby.
It's a deep ocean that goes miles.
It's a Marianas Trench. It's a Marianas Trench.
Yes, it's the trench. All right. So I need some defenses. Start with you, Kyle.
There's one defense. It is the one defense. Bears defense, 3,100. I think it was the fourth. It was only the fourth highest price, despite being, I believe, the highest scoring defense in the league by not even that close of a margin. I said it before. Tannehill is the 32nd ranked quarterback by PFF. They've given up a large amount of turnovers. I don't see how they weren't the highest priced, and it's all Bears defense, cash, tournament. In tournament, the way you differentiate yourself, because I'm guessing Bears will be highly owned, is something cheeky like the Jordan Howard, Tariq Cohen stack. And in cash, you don't care about ownership. Just play the Bears defense.
Fair.
Why get cute? At 3,300, they're making plays all over the field. I mean, it is a place to save a little bit, and I'm not opposed to the Cleveland Browns at home against the Chargers. I think that you can get 10 out of them, 2,600. I'm fine with the Cleveland Browns a little bit. I also like the Jets kind of at home. We certainly like home defenses, but Kyle, I couldn't agree with you anymore. I mean, it's going to be, the weather's going to be good in South Florida probably, and you're looking at a defense that's going to get you 10 to 15 points, and you're not paying $4K like you had to for the Titans last week at Buffalo.
You heard it here, kids. Don't get cute, get QT. Kiki QT.
No.
Houston Texans. All right, there I did it.
That's
Wrap
right.
us up, guys.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll be back next week. That might just be the season for us. The cute. Nah, I don't know. But stay tuned. If you want to find out if this show comes back after that pun, follow us all on Twitter. Follow myself at FF Kyle the Kid. Follow Bob at Football Diehard and Justin Lonero at Justin Lonero. Thanks for tuning in, guys.